They start the state. Hey, Tom, they start the state. But basketball, they got the advanced.
I don't know. I know they canceled the program tonight.
But they start the girls are still.
Yes,
We're still.
yes. They're over here, and it's just they canceled last night. Weather permitting, I guess. Yeah, the girls are.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. Board of Mayor and Alderman, City of Fayetteville, Tennessee, special call meeting February 16, 2021. With one item, new business, Lprf soccer field grant funding. Pick up where we left off the other day, last week. Mr. Collins will explain, I guess we have information we have from today.
Yes, sir. The first page of your tonight's meeting package is financial breakdown, and I'll ask Marla Lee to walk us through it momentarily. But first of all, it talks about the original grant application in April 2018, and then you'll see where it evolved into a bigger field, and then the bid process and the current summary where we are now. And when I say a larger field, that also applies in irrigation.
You ready for me, Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Again, I am Laura Lee Page with Community Development Partners, and I am the grant.
Hold on just a second.
I move that we suspend the rules in order to have an informal discussion before any action is taken.
I'll second.
Discussion on that. Can I call the roll?
Alderman Allen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bryant.
Aye.
Alderman Small.
Aye.
Alderman Martinez.
Aye.
Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Hartman.
Pass. We'll start the discussion. We just been as far as just discussing this whole thing.
Well, yeah, and for the one, the Laura Lee and the ones that's tuning in with us, the reason for suspending the rules was that we can discuss this more in an informal way, where we as a board can ask more questions or whatever, because we're somewhat constrained if we're under the rules on some of the comments we might want to ask. And normally what we do when we go to suspend the rules, we have our discussions and we ask all questions and all, and then we have to take a vote to go back under the rules. So this is the reason we did it. It's not anything going on that we've not done before. But we as board members, as aldermen, don't have the freedom to speak if we're under the rules as much as we do when we're out from under the rules. So it's a lot better to get all the information. It's going to be as much information as this is. It's a lot better to get the information with the rules being suspended, because we feel more free to ask the question, make a comment as we would if we was under the rules. That's the purpose. Thank you.
Harley, you want to go ahead?
Yes, sir. Thank you for explaining that. So like I said, I'm just the grant administrator and try to help walk you guys through this whole grant because as you guys saw at the last meeting, when it comes to financials, grant funds are not always intuitive to figure out what the actual balances are and everything. So today we're going to walk you through exactly how everything, how the project has evolved and how the cost has progressed. And I think you'll find that that sheet that we gave you guys on, or that was sent out on Friday is going to be helpful. And I'm just going to walk you through everything. But first, I want to pass it to Barge to introduce themselves and so that y'all know that they're part of this as well.
Joe, you're muted. Joe, you're muted. There he goes.
No matter what, you never get used to this. Again, thanks a lot for having us here. Thanks, Laura Lee, for the intro. My name is Joe Sawyer. I know I've been here a couple times prior. I'm a senior landscape architect with the firm and have been involved with sort of behind the scenes on the construction documentation and such for the project. So and again, thanks for allowing us to be here again with you today. All yours, Mary.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Mary Vavra. I'm with Barge Design, and I just want to begin by apologizing to you, Mayor, Alderman, city staff, and to my team members for the last meeting. I know, please know that Barge Design Solution has set standard policies and practices in place, which I followed up until I volunteered to calculate and provide the amount needed without appropriate review from our team. I apologize, and I want you to know that I first started working for the city of Fayetteville back in 2014. And I say this with great passion. I love this town, and I hope you can forgive my lack of preparedness at the last meeting. I sincerely apologize. And now, if I may, I would like to turn it over to Laura Lee Page at CDP to walk you through the timetable events and explain the cost for this project in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And like you said, I mean, it's a team effort. And so, you know, I think that the last meeting reflects on me as well for not, you know, pushing to get those numbers and to make sure we were all on the same page on the front end. I was out the week before, and that kind of threw things off for me. So my apologies to Mayor, Board of Aldermen, each of you for last week. But I hope that what we've prepared today and what we sent to you guys on Friday makes you feel, regardless of last week, much more comfortable with where we are with financials, as well as an understanding for the project. So I'm going to try to share my screen. So can you guys see this PowerPoint?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Oh, started at the end. Oh, I had it right. I was just going through it before. Sorry. Okay, here's where we start. We start with the application, which we put in the spring of 2018, obviously a long time ago now. So you can see that these projects really take a long time to get to this point. And after it was funded, we had to go through several workshops. The city had to, I had to, and then we started an environmental process that had to be cleared before we could get a contract. And by we, I mean the city. And then from there, we, as in the CEP and Barge, contracted with the city, and then we're able to get some preliminary items done, and in the meantime, Barge could start design. And then what happened was that Barge did their design based on this originally proposed U10 field and parking, and then started changing things to get you guys a better product. So as you can see, we started with a $500,000 grant. So that is grant dollars. The actual contract for the project with Lprf is $1 million. And why you're not going to see that whole $1 million is it's very confusing. And so it's better to just show you guys the cash dollars, because typically an LPRF is 50-50. So that means 50% of everything you spend, you get back. Well, because they allow land as match, y'all were able to use this whole property valued over $500,000 as your match, which means that at the end of the grant, you will receive $500,000 of cash. So that's where we started. And then, like I said, in June of 2020, started having conversations about really what the city would be most useful to the city, and also where the field should be located based on some surveying. And so based on those increases or those changes, Barge worked up a cost estimate that included an additional scope. So you'll see that adds lighting. So that means that y'all can play at night, irrigation, which helps keep your fields in good shape, and did include a contingency. And unfortunately, like I said, they had already originally designed. And so that's why they had to come back with an increase in their design fees. That is typical and understandable. On each slide, you see the size of the field, and that corresponds with the sheet that you guys have. That's just a one-stop shop and shows you guys the size of the fields and how they progressed. It was with this June 2020 cost estimate that the city used to determine how much to request or earmark under the bond issue. And you'll see the color coded, and then at the bottom on your sheet, at the bottom, how we got those totals there. So continuing on. So based on the original grant application and then the new changes, that's where we get our budget. So you can see our original professional fees, the bond issue included the additional design, the grant construction dollars, which was $425,000, and then the bond issue for the irrigation and lighting. And so you'll see I have it totaled, so you can see everything it's going to cost, or we project it as cost, and then how much the grant covers, and then how much is cash. And when I say cash, I just mean the additional amount of cash that y'all are putting in. And yes, that does include your bond issue. So then we redesigned, and with the redesign, because we moved the location of the field, while all of that was being redesigned, me at CDP and our team went and did a re-review for the environmental. And that's just to make sure that when everybody, all the environmental agencies reviewed this land, that they were okay with this whole area and not just this back area. And Fayetteville typically has some fun archaeology involved. So we were lucky on this one and didn't run into any problems with the re-review. So then we submitted the plans and got them approved, and then held off to make sure the bond was in place, and went to go put everything out to bid. And in those conversations, while we were prepping for the bid opening, Barge went back and made an updated cost estimate. And that is because construction in general right now is coming in high and escalating quickly no matter what. And so wanted to make sure that if we were going to be over, that we kind of knew what that was going to look like. So in this cost estimate that you see here is based on the larger field with the irrigation and with the lighting. And then you'll see the grant construction, that did not change the scope, but in their estimates, it's the 574 as opposed to the 425, which was at this point now a 3-year-old estimate. And then broken down between the additional scope. So that's what we went in at the end of January for the bid opening expecting. And luckily weren't too far off, only $4,000 off of the total construction estimate from earlier in January. And so this aligns with that estimate. And then these numbers are broken down, but it was a lump sum bid. So what happened was we had to go back to the contractor in the past week and see if they would be willing to give us a little bit more of a breakdown on these costs, on their lump sum bid. And luckily they have decided to give us some of those numbers. They don't want to give us a full breakdown, and we can't start negotiating anything at this point. And I'll let Joe actually talk a little bit more about some conversations with the contractor, since he's been the one talking with them.
All right. Thanks, Laura Lee. I did have a conversation with the contractor based on, as Laura Lee mentioned, we were able to get the two pieces of information you see, the lighting / electrical and irrigation. They know that there's bond items, and so they're very specific on their costs. But in the process of the conversation, I asked them if there was anything else they might, consider or might have noticed in the drawings that could have a positive impact on the costs. And they did say yes, there were a couple of items that would have a positive impact on the costs up to as much as $40,000. Those are just as maybe a change in irrigation, change in pipe size here, change in some fittings, meters. If the city were to purchase the meters directly, there would be a savings in markup and items like that. So the point of this is that, while, some of the numbers you see are considered fixed costs, we still have the opportunity to negotiate with this contractor, and hopefully it continues on with one contractor. So for schedule wise, we can keep pushing. Excuse the dog in the background. There is some room, hopefully, to move to the positive with our pricing. The contractor is willing to work with us as much as they think they can. They are concerned, of course, until we get to a point where we are actually negotiating a contract, is since it's a lump sum bid, they're not obligated to furnish us any information, and they're sensitive about information getting out in the event that there is a rebid potentially in the future. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. So like you said, this is really the extent of the information we can give you, other than saying we know that there are some places that this can come down. We just can't negotiate those things at this point. So then you'll see that last column on your sheet, and then on this slide that brings all of those numbers together and shows you exactly what the estimated project costs are with the bid, and then the quote we have from Musco Lighting. And so this is the full beautiful package of the soccer field and the beginning of your complex. So that's $1,083,385. And just a reminder, and this is what Mary has gone through with you guys already, but I just wanted to remind you and show you in a simple form that y'all are getting multiple iterations of a soccer field. You can have, I didn't write down the numbers, but you can see a bunch of 45 by 60 fields, and all regulation for each of those age groups. So you're getting a lot with this one field, but as you can see, it turns into multiples. And as a reminder, this is part of a whole complex plan This will be the first of several fields, as well as concessions and bleachers and more parking and whatnot. So, and the parking on this one is not going to be a grand parking lot like you see here. It'll be your first step, making sure that there's some gravel parking there, and then you meet your ADA parking requirements and walkway. So then, to summarize what our actual costs are, again, here you're seeing what the total of the actual costs are, how much the grant dollars will be. So again, this is a reimbursable program, meaning that you will be spending the full amount, but you will get reimbursed $500,000. And we try to do that along the way. But at the end, it'll be $500,000. And then the cash that the city puts in, so that's just your local funds, is going to be $583,385. And again, when I say cash, I'm including the bond. So to really wrap it up, and take everything I've talked about, everything you see on your sheet, is getting down to the dirty numbers that you guys really want to know about, which is how much extra is it going to cost you guys? And that number is $292,980. And that includes all of the lighting, so that must go quote, that includes the contractor's bid, that includes design and everything that we have planned for this project. So that is overall everything on the financials. And as you've seen, the drawings have progressed, the field sizes have progressed to get to where we are today. So in order to move forward, we would need the city to commit the additional funds, because we have a lump sum bid, so we can't start negotiating yet. And once it is awarded, if it is awarded, then we can begin negotiating, do a change order, bring some money out. And the only thing you are bound to at this point is the grant scope, which I can go back to that first slide so that you guys can see that, but it's also on the far right, explaining in a big overview of what those activities are required by the grant. But when it comes to taking items out, you do have options. You could take out the lighting. I would caution against taking out lighting and irrigation, because then you get into the legality of whether or not we should rebid, because we're taking out a large portion of the work. But so far I've not heard that as a concern or an interest, but I did want to throw that out there for what your options are. So from here, assuming there is an award or a recommendation to award, we will take it to Recreation Education Services, which is the agency that administers the local Parks and Recreation LPRF grant. They will concur. Hopefully they will probably come back with some questions, because that's just what they do. And it does take time, because there are questions and there is a comment period, but we'll try to get everything to them that they would possibly need, and get their concurrence, and then go towards contract execution. And if y'all decide to negotiate anything, change orders.
Literally, I literally have two questions. One, explain the difference between the 218 at the meeting last week and how it jumped to the 292,980. And to maybe this may be for Joe or Mary on who decided that it had to be turned in as a lump sum bid as opposed to an itemized.
I'll let Mary talk about the lump sum, and I'll tell you kind of where things, where the difference is. So the 218 included it was really just looking at the bid minus the, I should have had that pulled up, but bid minus the professional fees. And again, that was a figure without me involved. And I have to stress that this is, that is part of the complication with these grants, is calculating and figuring out what goes on what side and what balances. So it was just a misunderstanding of how we should be calculating those additional funds. So the difference in that is basically the $75,000 of professional fees.
I'm just trying to make sure that that's not being calculated twice, because we had the slide where you went from the 500 to the 425. And then I'm just trying to make sure that's not being calculated twice in the whole process.
No, it is not. You should be able to follow all of the totals. And really what it comes down to is you want to total everything together and then take out the grant, and those are going to be your differences. So you have the actual cost. So that's your total you want to look at. And then you want to look at your budget. And what's the difference between those two numbers is the 292,980.
So then also, so Mary, can you answer the question on the lump sum part?
Yes, so, our approach was try to make the documents as simple as possible, because we knew that we may have an overage. And so a lot of times, if you see it all itemized, they end up, adding more to the cost. And so it was just a strategy that we took. Hey, we need to, get this moving. There was a lot of urgency to get this out, the first of the year. And so it was just an approach, because we knew that you wanted the lighting and the irrigation. So didn't see a need at that point to have that breakout.
So Joe or Mary, explain the lighting in the bid versus the lighting in the bond, it would come out of bond issue, exactly what you're getting from
Right.
the lighting.
The lighting number that's in the bid is the infrastructure supporting the lighting that is in the $140,000 must-go. So that is the $140 must-go price are poles and lights and their controls, and that's it. So what the remainder is taking power from the source, a drop transformer, underlying conduit. It also controls there's a backflow preventer that has freeze protection and such associated with it. And there's some very long runs of conduit, but primarily it is the conduit to each of the pole locations so that when the pole shows up with its foundation ready to go, it's ready to be hooked up. So those are the two prices.
Other questions, comments?
I don't have any of these folks. My questions and comments is going to be mainly to the board. I mean, I think y'all done, you've explained everything. So my comments mainly is going to be to the board and the citizens. It's going to be my comments. And that's the reason I wanted us to be in, suspend the rules, because we can talk more freely. And I can talk freely about this also because we're in suspended rules. I'm going to make a recommendation later on how to fund this extra. Just let everybody know up front, be thinking about it. And I can do that because we're all together now. I'm going to make a recommendation on how to fund this extra. That's $206,000 that we've got left in the UDAC state grant, which is all state funds. It's not city taxpayers' funds. I'm going to make a recommendation that we apply that to this overage, and then that anything else up to the $86,980 would come out of the general capital fund, which that would get us down to only using that amount or less. If we negotiate down, it'd be less city funds. But that would put us in a whole lot better standing. Now, what I've done is I've had the I've had the finance director to get with the state of Tennessee to be sure that we can use those funds for that. We get it in writing. We got permission in writing. I've got a copy of it right here where we got permission in writing to use those funds. I had rather see those funds go to the soccer complex than put any more of them into where we've been putting them in the past. We put about first half of them into the tourism. If we could do this with the soccer complex, I'll be able to drive by there and see where they went. If the board agrees to that, it makes it a whole lot easier on the city taxpayers. That's funding has been in place for probably 10, 12 years and been sitting there idle. It's completely legal to use it. We've got proof it's legal to use it. The other thing I want to kind of speak to, I want to speak to three things, and I'm going to keep it fairly short. That aside, the true breakdown of this is a whole lot better than it looks. If you really break it down to where you need to, as far as our taxpayers is concerned. The true breakdown for this is we got a $500,000 grant. We had to match that $500,000 grant 50-50 with another $500,000. We was very fortunate in that Goodman or Dyke agreed to sign that property over to us for that purpose. Now, I don't know that it's in the deed for that purpose, but the city attorney might know. I don't know, but whether it's in the deed for that purpose or not, that's what it's for. And if we didn't use it for that, we'd be sitting here taking that property as a city property, and it wouldn't be doing that factory right because their intent is for it to be used for that. So that property is as much value to the city taxpayer if we're going to proceed with this and finish it up. That property is as much value to the city taxpayer as $500,000. Because if we didn't have that property and if we did this project, we'd have to put in another $500,000. So if you look at that, you're talking about $1 million that the taxpayers is not paying anything on. Then if the board is willing to use this $206,000 of the UDAG state funds, that gets us up to $1,206,000 before we put anything into it at all, period. If the board's willing to do that. So as you kind of begin to break that down, you look at where we end up at. We end up at with $377,885 if we do this, taxpayers funding in that project. But keep in mind that we've already approved $290,000 and $405 of that in the bond issue. All of that's already been approved. The taxpayers was okay with that. It was in the bond issue. We didn't have that. We didn't have anybody to call for a resolution for the 20 days or whatever. So that's all, it's already set in place. It's already there. So we do it in this way, we're going to end up with $86,980 needed of additional taxpayers funding minus whatever we can negotiate down. So really, if you look at the big picture, you're looking at $1.5 million. You're looking at $1,583,385 in value, you might say, to where we get down to the $377,385 to the city taxpayers. That's a pretty good deal, in my opinion. And then we've already approved the $290, whatever. It would get us down to coming up another $86,000 or less is what it would get us to. That's the one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing I wanted to mention was what has thrown us on this whole thing, or through me, doesn't have anything to do with these folks up here. None of this has anything to do with these folks. What threw me was I couldn't figure it out when I was talking about it the other day. I got lost on the numbers. I got lost on everything. Then y'all furnished us a timeline. And I got to look at this timeline, and it came down through here. And then I began to see about a 3 or 4 months period lost here because, and I didn't know this. There was a meeting that took place to discuss a larger field. additional services, redesign, all of this came into the process. All of this added to the original plan. It added to the original plan. And I didn't know where that came from. So I went back and began to look through the minutes. And I've still not been able to get exactly down where all of that came from. But what I did find in the minutes, on the December 2nd, 2019, item number 2, the city administrator reported that we have the deed for the property in hand. The engineers are working on specifications for the project to go out for bid. And then there's an alderman that asked if the city has input about the size and layout of the fields, and the city administrator replied that we can do more than the grant specifies, but not less. The design is to have a large recreation field. Then the department head, the city, recreation department head, recommended that we do the largest field size, and then section it off if needed for various age groups. I think that's where we're at right now. So I guess what I'm saying is, if I don't remember, and I don't think it did, that added substantial cost to this project. And we never saw it in the finance department. In our finance meetings, I look back through. I never saw where this ever came to finance, for this to be added to the cost. That's where I got blindsided at right there. That's where I got way off track, till I could come back and see that that's what had happened. And then with y'all's help, kind of work through this, I guess in a good way here. We'd probably end up here. I think it would have been better. I think it would have been better if, maybe I don't remember, but I don't remember. I think it would have been better when the substantial cost went to be added, if it had come through the finance committee and on through the whole work session in a manner which we normally do. And I don't think we'd be as blindsided or whatever about what's going on. Where we at right now with it, I'm good with it. I'm good with this. I think it's a good. I think it's going to come out good if we do it. I was just explaining that to make it clear that I guess I just didn't follow the process through as close as maybe I could or whatever. So I just brought that up. And I could see through some of the other minutes here. What I didn't ever find, but I don't have all the minutes, I don't think. I could never read. I could find where it was talked about upsizing the field and moving it and all. I really couldn't find where the decision was made to actually do it. But I don't think I've got all the minutes. So that's where I'm at on this. That's the reason I wanted to come under the suspended rules, to make it clear. I mean, because the taxpayers and residents got a right to know. In the end, me, in the end, personally speaking, if I'm looking at a $1.5 million project here, irregardless if some of it's land, it's still the same value either way. And I can get that, or we can get that for $377,385 or less of taxpayers funding. And that includes what we approved in the bond issue too. I think it's a good deal. I do. I'm a little unsettled about how we got here, but we're here. There's no going back. I mean, the situation of what we've got ourselves into here. And I'm just going to make it clear, flat out, what we've got ourselves into, or what we've been put into, or got here some way is a timeline that's backed us into a corners of war that we really don't have much choice. Because with that September timeline coming up quick to where we could lose that grant, we don't have time to make any changes. Only time we've got is just to deal with it, move on, make the best out of it we can. We just don't have time to go back and do anything different, make any changes. If we start making changes now, with all the changes that have been made, it's just going to complicate the thing even further. So my thoughts is to deal with it, move on, and be done with it. I do think it'll end up being a good deal. City, you know, children or whoever will play on that field eventually. And I have no doubt, we might have a rough year this year coming up with soccer. I have no doubt that it'll come back if we get a complex like that. I have no doubt that we will certainly be able to have a lot of people playing on that field. No doubt whatsoever. As clear as I know how to be.
Other comments?
Well, it would have been nice to have some education for us and the public before this process started. Because of the process of timelines and information, and the lack of finance committee's involvement in it, there's a void for me in the whole process.
Scott, explain that whole, you got two concerns, or probably concerns for more than two, Alderman just spoke that, as far as at what point it was decided. I can understand once you go through it now from where it started, but explain the decision, who made the decision to change the design and incur the additional design fees and design size of the fee.
Thank you, Mayor. On June 1st, during the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, was the first major discussion on that. Lprf soccer complex update. Martinez, Rachel Martinez at the time, speaking about the field sizes and grading being an issue. Biggest field closest to bypass decided to push to the back of the complex due to grading issues. Approximate cost of $20,000 for cost of seed and irrigation. Field size will be high school regulation field, biggest field. There was discussion about miscommunication with parking being a big importance. Alderman Alderman Allen asked what's the timeline for soccer complex? Response being complex is in the environmental phase. Scott will check about a tentative timeline when things can be bid out for a director's report next month. Then at the same meeting on June 1st, 2020, the bond issue was discussed. $200,000 proposed for lighting complex, $180,000 for Musco LED lighting, $20,000 in intangibles. Scott proposed committee wanted to add $20,000 to budget for irrigation costs. Bid for water irrigation property has water, gas, and sewer. Take the $20,000 additional proposal to the board for approval. And as a follow-up to that, in June of 2020, I issued a city administrator update on June 26, 2020, and reported the 2018 Lprf grant for the Fayetteville Soccer Complex moving forward with several video meetings the past several days. Plans are now to provide a high school regulation size field that can be sectioned off for several smaller fields as needed for AYSO play. In addition, a lighting proposal and irrigation system proposal has been brought forth for consideration by the BMA in the 2020 bond proposal. The next action was in July 2020, the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. Mr. Collins said that the following processes: environmental study, redesign. Scott Collins stated he will try and get Laura Lee to come to the next meeting to discuss the question. Alderman Rachel Martinez said she thinks the lighting is a bigger deal than parking per se. Discussion on bond issue. Irrigation and drainage issues are a big deal and increase the numbers. Also, lighting is a huge impact. Need to think about adding lights. The next action was August 3rd, 2020. The Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. Lprf soccer complex update. Director Mitchell said he received an update today from Mary Bagwright her email, she was at the soccer site today and is working on getting categorical exclusion approved and gave a timeline of March through August 2021 for construction beginning at the soccer complex. That was followed up by an August 7th city administrator report to the full board of mayor and aldermen. Fayetteville Soccer Complex is continuing to move forward with significant administrative planning activity in recent days. With the plans revised to provide a high school regulation size field that can be sectioned off for several smaller fields and needed for AYSO to play, the new categorical exclusion has been submitted for environmental approval. In addition, the lighting proposal and irrigation drainage system is being incorporated into the design. The next action down during the August 31st Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. Simple notation that moving forward in the grant process, designing field stages, sent a design outline of complex showing utilizing the bank at the complex for seating. And October 5th, Parks and Recreation Committee. We are currently in the environmental process and our goal is to be completed with the complex for the 2021 spring season. Signed the contract 2 months ago. TDEC and environmental first of the year will go to bid. That October meeting was followed up by an October 27th report to the board stating the status of the grant. And item of note, our next steps are to pull together the complete set with lighting, irrigation, etc., and move into the bidding process. Barge Designs and CDP are being pushed to complete the bid process in December, January, with construction starting in early spring 2021. Projected timeline is expected to be 180 days from the contract date. November 2nd, the Parks and Recreation Committee addressed it. The stamp plans have been submitted and under review with expected approval. We should be looking to go to bid in December 2020, and we plan to start construction in early spring for the season to begin in August 2021. That November meeting was followed up with a report to the board on November 13th, 2020, stating the Fayetteville Soccer Complex is continuing to move forward with plans to bid the project during the winter months with construction starting in early spring 2021. The field lighting proposal and irrigation drainage system proposal has been incorporated into the design. Estimated completion date, August 2021. In December 1, Parks and Rec Committee meeting, formally going to bid this month, working out technical design issues. We will open bids mid-January. Alderman Allen asked if there's a go date to be finished. Scott Collins said August 2021 is when the grant expires. With the drainage details nailed down, it will go quickly. Alderman Allen said, when does fall soccer start? Alderman Martinez, Roger Martinez, 2021 fall soccer starts August, September. Scott Collins said it would be a lighted complex. And lastly, in a report to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, November 25th, 2020, is pretty much repeating what was reported earlier in the month, and with all this information hinging on the bond issue. Approval from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Any other comments? Discussion?
Is it because the cost of everything from $20,000 when it was first disposed of there, irrigation went up that much?
I'd have to defer to the engineers on that, and that was even through.
That was just a number they did.
Yes, that was probable cost. Every bit of that was all based on probable cost. And likewise with the bond issue, that was just a probable cost. It could have been 40,000 less, 20,000 higher. We just best educated guess at the time.
The cost of everything has increased, and it continue to increase. I think we go back and if we do get this approved, if we go back and try to put an irrigation system in later after the fact, it's gonna cost a whole lot more now.
Well, no, you don't want to put an irrigation system or lighting in after the fact.
That's right.
You know, it was a smart move to get them in ahead of the fact, because you go back, you have to do that digging and tear all that stuff up. A lot of that stuff's on the ground, and you don't want to do that. You won't get, I think that the board would want to get the lighting and irrigation in, or we wouldn't approve it in the bond issue. And we made that clear in the bond issue that we felt like that probably should be in, so.
And these are complete lights, because I've heard that.
These are complete lights,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. These are complete lights, LED system, 25-year warranty. But yes, they come in ready, aim, fire.
There was some confusion on that. Laura Lee was here the other day because I happened to be in here, and I asked her flat out, "Is this lights that you can turn on and they'll shine?" You know, so yeah,
These are lights. You flip a switch, they're on.
Yeah,
Full power.
And you got the cost of the transformer in there too, right, Joe?
Yes.
And there's some lead time on getting those ordered and getting them in.
There is definitely some coordination that needs to happen with the utility company and the city itself. Yes.
That's just an issue with our industries and everything else.
Yes.
And there are shortages around the country on everything. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I like the vice mayor's UDAG fund thinking. I mean, that's money the taxpayers don't have to come up with. We've already got. That puts it 86. I think I said 39.9 is contingency in that as well. Is that right? Was that involved in that final number, that 39.9 in contingency money?
Laura Lee, I believe it was, yes.
So I mean, it could be half that.
No. We do not have a contingency line item in these total funds. For some reason, it keeps trying to go back to the other. Sorry. There is not contingency in this $1,083,385. No.
I saw that earlier, so I thought that was in that final.
So Laura Lee, can you explain that? Because in the June 2020, you had 39,903. In January 2021, you had 76,395. So can you explain the reason why that was not put into the bid process?
Well, you don't bid out contingency. I imagine the contractor has his own contingency in there, but that doesn't really, they'll come and ask you for extra money if they really go over. But this June 2020 was a cost estimate. And so contingency is involved. When we get to bidding it out, contingency line items aren't necessarily there unless you want to put in contingency. I will say, I was not involved with the process of determining the bond fund amounts, but originally when I talked to Stacy last week, the thought was that Barge's additional $24,000 for redesign was not included or had not been funded, but it had actually gone into the bond amount, but somehow contingency did not go into the bond amount. So again, June 2020 is a cost estimate, and what we're coming to you with today in the current summary line column, those are actual cost. except for Musco is still $140,000 quote, but their quote is still good. So that's about like a bid.
I want to hear Mr. Bryant's figures again for your new UDAG funds.
206,000. Where's it? Yeah, that's we was at $377,385. Meeting, I guess you'd say, we had, this is not their numbers, this is my numbers. We had 290,405 in the bond issue, left was 86,980, which matched their numbers. I went about it in a different way, I say 206,000. I can't say this to the penny, but that's within, I mean, that's right on it, real close. And my numbers, the way I went through it, matched exactly to the dollar of the numbers they had.
I just have a few questions, Mayor, to the group here that's on Zoom with us tonight. We all know that there's probably a hidden cost somewhere. I don't think we're finished with this. Do y'all see anything that we're not seeing that could possibly come up? I mean, with us not redesigning again or anything like that? Any cost that could potentially run this up even higher?
In discussions with the contractor so far, and granted, they have not been real detailed, they've just been more on the analysis side. We're not seeing any items that could come up and bite us. We're not seeing any concerns that something may be discovered. So to answer your question, no.
And then I want to just say to the board, I don't know how we got to this point. I've gone back, like Alderman Bryant, through the Alderman meeting minutes. This never came up. We didn't discuss more money, larger field, redesigning. Went through the work session minutes. It was never there. I don't know. I've got the committee meeting minutes and I flagged everything, highlighted everything, and yes, it was discussed there, but it was never brought to the work session for us as aldermen to talk about, Scott. This was, yes, you sent your administrative updates occasionally, but we never discussed this as a board. We weren't all in on this. But then when I go to the Parks and Recs committee meeting minutes, it's there. I mean, I don't know. Now, we as a board have to vote on this when we had no input into the size of this field. What started out as an idea to provide younger children with a space to play soccer and learn the game has turned into an expensive fiasco. This is ridiculous that we're looking at this much money overage that we've got to come up with somewhere, that we've got to use out of the UDAG fund where we could use it for other things. Let's go back to April of 2018. We've got a plan here that has a field. It's for a U10 soccer field that's 50 by 80 yards. We have a signage, we have fence, we have a sidewalk, and we're within budget of $500,000, which is the amount of the cash from the grant. The city would be out zero. Got the land donated. We've got a $500,000 grant to pay for a soccer field for small kids to play. And now here today, we're looking at $1.5 million. We don't have a soccer league. We don't have anybody ready to play. Few have signed up, but not enough to have games. And we're going to spend $1.5 million. This is crazy. I just don't understand it. And looking back at these minutes and all these decisions made there when it didn't include everybody. Who approved the plan? I mean, I know it's in the minutes of the board meeting, or of the recreation minutes, excuse me, but who actually approved that?
The Parks and Recreation Committee, along with me and Chris Mick.
But we're all having to put our neck on the lines and vote for this.
Can I ask a question? I mean, if we look back at the minutes, if I'm not mistaken, you've been in attendance to all those meetings.
I have, but
Now,
I'm
this
not
is the
allowed to
first time it's
speak.
been questioned.
We're not allowed to
ask
speak at
questions
those
during the
meetings.
meetings.
We're not allowed to speak at those meetings.
There's never been a time where you or Alderman Small or anybody else was in attendance at a committee meeting that we have not allowed an alderman to speak.
Right.
Never.
If
It's even been open to you to speak in the past.
I've been asked to speak.
But you
What's
could have
my
asked to
opinion?
speak. Nobody's ever been denied. I believe Alderman Small and Alderman Hartman have both spoken at the Park and Rec Committee.
If I was
And we
asked, I
haven't-
did, but it's frowned upon if you just speak out at a committee meeting because you are not on that committee.
That's not true.
So I'll finish what I've got to say. And then most importantly, why? Why are we doing this? We started with a field for small kids to play. And now we've grown into this. We don't have a league. I don't know why we're doing this. Why can't we go back to the April 18 plan, build that field? And then if the league grows, let's grow with it. I mean, we're putting a lot of money at stake here. I don't know why that, we can't go back to that. What are we thinking? We're an aging community, let's face it. What are we doing for our seniors? Why not spend that $600,000? I'm talking about the bond money plus the additional money, which almost makes it $600,000 for something everybody can use. Splash pads. What about bathrooms downtown? Everybody we talk to says you need bathrooms downtown. Upgrade the parks so everybody can use them. Let's add handicap playground equipment. We don't have any handicap playground equipment anywhere in town. But we're gonna have a big, nice soccer complex without a league. If you look at the things in the city, the parks and stuff, they're run down. Everything needs to be updated. We're adding more to this rec department to have to take care of. Pardon me?
Go ahead, you're still speaking.
Okay. The rec department, this is gonna be more for them to take care of.
You do realize this project started over 2.5 years ago.
Oh, I realize when it started, yes.
I'm just curious.
So
And
that's
we
why I
did have a league prior to COVID. If I'm not mistaken, the numbers were 130.
130.
So we do have a
We
league.
do have a
COVID
horse getting on the
kind
league.
of
We
messed
do
that
have a
up.
league.
Right, what we do. Soccer's big.
And you said something about, the aging community, the reason.
Are you done?
I mean, or did you have any more comments before? Martinez?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
She was mentioning about the aging community. I mean, yes, I agree with it. We do have an aging community, but there's a lot of grandparents that come and enjoy the whole day when these kids play soccer. So that is something they enjoy as a family. But saying that, if we don't get the kids something here to play, that's the reason. I think soccer, Mrs. Allen, I think you got the numbers as well. You called other places. It's everywhere. The numbers are low. It's just not Lincoln County. It's Ward County. But to say that we don't have a league to play, a league to start, we do have a league. They're excited about getting the field to play on, but that's why we can't just get a small field and make it a big field. I think it would cost us more money long run, would it not? We can't.
Well, this opens up for multiple games to be played on this.
What's a multi-purpose field for a lot of activities?
If he's through, in the October 5th Parks and Recs minutes, Alderman Martinez announced that the AYSO Soccer League didn't have enough participation for the fall league. We need to prepare and promote for 2021. We didn't have enough to have a fall league. And then here we are in the spring, and as the way that I understand it from then director, there's not enough signed up for the spring league to have games.
And I think that comment was made because that was during COVID and everybody else was, we were up in the air. I think we shut did they shut AYSO down because of COVID?
I know they didn't, I believe they did in the spring, I'm not sure about the fall. And I would say COVID still affected the numbers, kind of like the Fall Burger Festival and everything.
There's no doubt it has. I mean, that's affecting numbers. I mean, I agree with that.
COVID has affected it, but we're building this field, going to using all this money for, we could use a smaller field. We could have stayed with the proposed one in 2018 and been within budget. They would have money to do other things.
I really don't think at that time, back in 2018, those figures were hold for the increase for over 3 years. So we're looking at least 5% every year, up to 15%, so we can't hold those figures from 18. So we need to think about this UDAG money, which can be used for what? We have Mayor Law worked hard, I think almost 2 years to get this approved so that we could. So here we sit now, we have to make a decision.
Well, this is the reason I'm going to suspend the rules, because
Right.
the board members need to be able to express their opinions, and every opinion I've heard expressed has been a good opinion, a strong opinion. Bottom line is, we've been pushed back into a problem. I don't think we can go back and re-kick this thing and go back to the original field, because I think it put us in a timeline that would take a chance on losing this grant. We're gonna lose this grant in September, I believe, if we don't do something. So
And I'm sure this new field size is better, but I would like to have known from Parks and Rec to come to the full board as well. But I'm sure this, for all the different kinds of play, the high school, the different age groups, it's gonna be the right size field. But I would like to have known that too, but we've got a lot of free money on the table right here that's been given to us.
That's what I want to hear, the free money.
Yeah, and it's something we need to take advantage of, I think,
Just to figure for the taxpayers again, 89.
86.9.
86.9, but I believe they'll negotiate this thing down, is what I believe, but that's no guarantee on that. Bottom line is free money, whether it be in kind or grant you got 2 grants involved, plus in kind with the land more than covers. $1,206,000. That's a lot of $1,206,000 is a lot of funding that city taxpayers don't have to come up with. Once the direction would, I mean, that's just where we're at. So $377,385 is what the total is with us done approved 294.5 in the bond issue. So the bottom line is what we got left, if we do this, or most of this, what we got left kind of floating around out there to drop on the city taxpayers is what's done in the bond issue approved, plus 86,980, unless they can negotiate down. That's what we have.
The way that I see this, it's not free money. This is money sitting there that could be used for a lot of things. So it's not like it's free money just for a soccer field. Yes, it does kind of relieve us of some of the burden. Still $86,000, but this isn't free money. Nothing's free.
Well, I just said,
The land.
I know nothing's free, but it's a lot better than the 209 we're looking at without the UDAG. And we've gone. along those funds already promoting our downtown area.
It's the best thing that I could come up with setting and beating our head against the wall under the circumstances. The circumstances is what they are. We're not gonna be able to change the circumstances. This is, to me, what we got to do is just try to make the best we can out of it. I don't know, I don't know that about soccer. I do know this, if we go this route as far as the future, building on soccer for the future is going to have the facilities there a lot bigger and to build on. I do know that, but other than that, of course, it's been brought up to me also. You know, I've had some comments on this. Is looking forward. Is looking forward now. We got a lot of the land out there, and I suspect that somewhere down the road, I'm not likely to be on board then, but somewhere down the road, someone is going to build out that property because it's there to build out. If we let this grant get away from us now, you can forget about building out because the state ain't going to fool with us no more for a long time, more than likely. If we let this grant get away from us, if we run the time up too quick and mess up somewhere. So, you know, the thing about that is I don't know, the land is valued more than 500,000. I'm thinking maybe the remainder of the value of that land might help some point in the future to offset some of the cost that would be to the taxpayer. But we're not dealing with the future right now, we're dealing right now. So I'm dealing with this. So.
And another thing we need to think about, we're building this big complex field out there. There's no bathrooms. No bathrooms. So these children come to play. Little Johnny's got to go to the bathroom. Oh, we got to get in the car and we got to drive down to the marathon or the chicken shell or maybe Don Davidson's pretty close. Well, by that time the child's wet pants. You know, that's another cost that this board is looking at.
I asked about that, if I might. I asked about that, and because I don't go to soccer games. But when you get through your comments, I'll just say that I think it's someone on the board that can explain that better than I could. So,
You know, I did check into like the city high school, the football field, $300,000. They did that field. And look what we're putting in a soccer field.
well, the city,
Everybody's laughing at us.
300,000 was just a restart.
the city high school, the city high school field was, everything was already there. It didn't have to be completely regraded, rebuilt, and the whole deal. It was already there and then they graded out and all. They just went in and they just redid it. They went in and upgraded, redid it. I mean, we're coming, what we're doing here is the lights is already there, irrigation, everything. What we're doing here is from ground up. So it's gonna be higher. I mean,
I know it will be higher, but not this much higher. And then there's no concession stand. So we're still looking at a lot. I just want the board to look at the fact that we're still looking at a lot on this project. This isn't the end of this project.
Yes, well, I mean, I can say too about the soccer. I know a whole lot about soccer. We travel, soccer kids will travel all over the place, all over Tennessee. Matter of fact, in Alabama, you'd be surprised. No, they don't have bathrooms. They don't have concession stands. You bring your own stuff and it is what it is. And our kids suck it up. We play. You don't hear anybody complaining about not a bathroom there. They don't have concession stands. We carry our coolers and our chairs and sit out there for about 3 or 4 hours and lay off.
do they have the portable restrooms?
Some of them will have bring portables.
Right.
Some of them bring portables, set them up for us. Matter of fact, we had 2 or 3 over here at the 9th grade academy set up. Yeah, portables. Was that Halls? I think it was. But yeah, as far as concessions, am I right about if we lose this money, we can't go on for the phase 2 to ask for more grant money, correct? To go to build on this. But if we start with it, there is grants. There's more grants out there to get concessions, to get other. Yes. Okay.
So Laura Lee, is that, if we vote not to move forward with this, or, is there a possibility of getting an extension on the grant and redesigning the field to a smaller field?
So at this point, the grant does expire in September of 2021. In the past couple of rounds, they have had zero mercy as far as extending the contract period. We have not heard of anything about them extending because of COVID. You know, and I don't know that we could justify it because of COVID. We can work on it. We can ask, but I imagine their answer is going to be no. As far as future grants go, the land value goes, and I'm not trying to make a big deal here. I just, while I'm on the call, I do want to clarify. So we had to commit this full property. It was not subdivided. So unfortunately, and they have made exceptions to this in the past, so I'm not going to say for sure, but the difference between the $500,000 of value we got and the 600-ish of the appraised amount, we won't be able to apply that in the future. But you did get the full, or the 500. There wouldn't have been a way to section it off, and we actually, when we moved the field, that would have been an issue had we sectioned off at the beginning of the project. So there's that piece. And then if we finish in September, we're in LPRF's good graces. You can have your Parks and Rec master plan. We can go in 2022 for a phase 2 of this. You can go in for something else. It has to go along with whatever the master plan comes up with, but yes, you will be eligible to apply. If you do not finish by September, and by finish by September, we have to have the grant scope completed by September. So say there's really long lead time on the lighting. Lighting wasn't part of this 2018. So it's okay if that's not done. I know y'all will want it done for the fall season. I'm just saying, you know, that's not going to be what holds us up. But at the end of the day, we have to have a field and we have to have parking. And we do need to try to be in their good graces in order to be eligible for another round of grant, LPRF grant. And then to speak to the restrooms, we do have a concrete pad in there for porta potties.
So Laura, let me ask this question. So let's say you get to a vote here and it's approved and you get down the line and then you go with the contract, bid, whatever, and then something hits a snag, like any grant, like we've had on a couple other grants, in the middle of it, and you get past the deadline. I mean, you know, we have to look here about, you know, is there something like that happens? And trust me, it happens all the time. We're stuck on a situation on one of our other grants. And when it gets with the staging, you know, timelines just kind of blur. So what happens in that situation if you get past and all the grant construction part's not done and we're in like October of this year and we can't get reimbursed on money? How does that work?
Well, the good news is you do not have to request all of that money by September. So say we have one more pay application to come through. What has to happen is that pay application has to show that that work involved in the grant, so the original scope, that there's a field there and there's grading done for a second field. There's ADA parking and there's gravel parking. There are signs up. If we can show that financially before September 30th, I believe is the date, then you're okay. We can request that money up to 45 days later. We can get we can call an inspection in after that 30th. So I know Scott had read off some minutes previously that said, you know, I had said things had to be done in August. That's because I like to have some grace period. And then when we get to the nitty gritty, which is where we are right now, that's when, the reality is we have to be done by September. So that's where the difference between those two dates come from. So my hope would be that we can at least meet the bare minimum of the grant scope and have the contractor, we can show that that was done prior to September 30th. And we're going to be okay as far as the grant goes, as long as we can get the pay request in within 45 days and whatnot.
So Laura Lee,
And that's something that, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's something that Mary and I have talked about is, realistically, can any of this be front loaded? What can be done to make sure that at minimum we're meeting the grant scope? And that's something that we can talk to the contractor about more as well, just trying to make sure that that's done on the front end.
We should mention that it could be potentially problematic if we try to do a rebid, because at this point we've got a contractor and with the schedule of completion, it pushes us to right at the end. So what we could talk about, as Joe mentioned earlier, once we get under contract with them, talking about some reduction, but we couldn't go back to that original design without a full rebid. And there's just simply not enough time to get the new drawings for a smaller field, rebid it, and then have that constructed by September.
My question, Laura Lee, so you're saying on the future bids, there will be match. We don't have any room on the land for match, so there will be match like phase 2.
I'm sorry, I don't know that I'm fully, you're talking about.
I think she's trying to ask, when you get to a phase 2, you get to another 50-50 situation. And the
Yes.
remainder of the value of the land can't be used.
No, I'm sorry.
I just hate that this board's been put in this position. We're at the 12th hour. We have to vote on spending the taxpayers' money. And that was not the original purpose of this property.
I'll state in my comments, the process here on the redesign, that did not follow what I was saying before protocol, as far as this should have gone, with that change in committee, any other committee, that should have come through finance on the design. If it had been something that was just like within the budget of the rec department or something, but this should have come through for, and was clarified. It all makes sense when you look at it explained this evening, but the points have been made that this has come up, at the 11th hour. And then also, I still have this discomfort on the bid with not being broken out. I work with bids all the time, and yes, you can do a not to exceed bid. Well, something like this, when you're coming in much higher, I think that the contractor should, we're not asking to see what their overhead and their margin is. We're just trying to see what the breakout is on the concrete work, gravel, parking, sidewalk, signage, fencing, soccer field construction, and grading. I can see a difference here. What they gave us on irrigation for one field, that's up 16,000, but then the irrigation meter and backflow is down 3,000. That gives us context as a board when you're looking at those things, and that's not an unrealistic expectation to ask. So those are my main comments on the whole situation. So does anybody have anything else? Make a motion to go back to.
Yeah. I'm going to go back on the rules.
Second.
Discussion on that. Scott, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Brown.
Aye.
Alderman Small.
Aye.
Alderman Martinez.
Aye.
Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Hartman.
Aye.
Alderman Allen.
Aye.
All right, that passed. We're back on regular rules. We come to back to item A, LPR soccer field grant funding. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the soccer bid total of $1,083,335 with the additional funding needs to come from the UDAG grant, $206,000 and up to $86,980 for the general fund.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Scott, call the roll.
Alderman Small,
Aye.
Alderman Martinez, Alderman Allen,
Aye.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Hartman,
No,
Vice Mayor Brown.
The item passes. That is the only item we have.
Hold on,
Yeah, go.
can you? I want to make sure that the recommendation was to award the bid at 844. The number I heard was the total cost.
So we need to award for you, the 844 is what you need, and then us, how would we break that out?
I thought we were just voting on what we were having to finance. So,
Yes, y'all needed to agree.
My motion was for the total, but also it was to come up with the extra funding of these two items down here. That should put you where you want to be, but if you want another bid of 844, whatever, we've not adjourned, we still do it. If you want it that way.
I think the way you have it is fine as far as the additional funds and
Right.
encompasses everything, but we do need board approval to recommend the $844,000 bid for award contingent upon LPRF approval.
Is that 844, is that the total numbers? I don't have my thing in front of me. Is that what you want? An even 844?
The 844 is the bid. Yes, sir.
That's our total bid on January 28th.
oh, I see,
844.
okay.
There's no pennies, nothing on that. I move that we award that bid, $844,000 to that contractor that's made that bid. Do I do it? Is that right? Is that what you
Contingent upon
want?
LPRF.
Excuse me?
Contingent upon LPRF approval.
Okay, contingent upon that approval. Yeah, I make that motion.
Second.
I have a question. What happens if it goes over, based on Danny's motion that, what if something comes up and this goes over, where's the money coming from?
You'd have to come out for approval, correct?
Y'all would have a separate change order in front of you to approve at that point. Unless you guys wanted to go ahead and say, up to $50,000. I'm not suggesting that.
No,
I'm just saying.
I'm not going there. This is the number of my motion.
We expect the number to go down.
No, I'm not giving them changing no 50,000. This is my motion. If this is good with you, then if we get a second and everything, we'll vote on it and be done.
Second was Ms. Martinez.
Alderman Allen.
All right.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Martinez, Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Hartman,
No,
Alderman Allen,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown, Alderman Small.
Laura Lee, Joe, Mary, any other things? Nothing else?
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I started confusing me today.
I should know that.
Well, here's the deal. You do it, you know you're good. Don't do it about that.
We don't come up here again tomorrow night.
Saturday morning. Saturday.
I've been seeing so much of each other. It will be sent on February 27th.
Oh, that is coming.
Hey, you're later.
Have you ever read this much in one month?
Not in the little 2.5 years I've been here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, y'all used to.
This has been like, yeah, this has been twice more. Budget cycle. I'm ready to start.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start administrations for.